So when you want to do something cool, that's really hard and super crazy that we're doing it on a community level, let alone Old Academy Players is a very tiny stage. We have 95 seats in the theater, and trying to accomplish some of the technical elements, literal feat from the audience. There's nowhere to hide.
Welcome to the podcast, Theater Philadelphia, a podcast. It could not be a simpler title, TPTP. Let it bore itself into your brain so that you don't forget every time a new episode comes out, you can listen and find out a little bit more about our theater community. Welcome to this episode. We are having a chat by way of Old Academy Players. We are taking a trip over there to talk about Carrie the Musical. And I'm here with a few representatives of the production, and we are going to do introductions. I'm going to start with Josh.
Yeah, hey, my name's Josh Tull. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm the director for Carrie the Musical. I also serve on the production committee at Old Academy Players, and thanks for having us.
Okay. And KP?
Hi, my name is Katie Polero, or KP. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm playing Carrie in Carrie the Musical. This is my first theater role in Philadelphia. It's super exciting, and I'm really excited to talk about it with you guys.
Wonderful. Alicia?
Hi, my name is Alicia Sims. Pronouns are she and her, and I'm really excited to be part of Carrie the Musical as Chris Hargensen, as well as part of the executive board as treasurer for Old Academy of Players.
Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today. So let's talk about Carrie the Musical. I'm sure there are this will touch in multiple generations and Broadway obsessed fans all over the place. But talk about Carrie the Musical and how it made its way to Old Academy Player.
Yeah, I could start with that, and then I'll hand it off. Alicia is the resident expert on the production history of the show itself in terms of the musical on stage. But basically, Carrie has been on my personal bucket list for a long time to want to direct. I shopped it at several theaters, and Old Academy Players was the first ones that gave me the option to actually do it, considering the difficulty of the production itself. It's obviously based off of the Stephen King novel from 1974. And it's about Carrie White and her religious fanatic mother bullying in terms of like modern themes. And it essentially leads to her being bullied beyond repair, which has kind of catastrophic results for her classmates in terms of a high-level thought. Zooming out further, it's an exploration of womanhood and a classic coming-of-age story, and in terms of the treatment of others and actually seeing people for who they are. So I can throw it to Alicia to talk more about the actual production history of the show.
Absolutely. Let's dig in.
Sure. So actually, Carrie was part of my master thesis. I went to Temple University for my graduate program in musical theater studies. And my thesis was surrounding a big, broad, well, pretty much the adaptation of movies to the stage. So I was looking at a bunch of different movies, and one of them that actually caught my attention was Carrie. So in 1988, they decided, they were like, what happens if we try to make our own version of Fame, but with Carrie? And you can kind of see it didn't go well. It had about 6 performances before it closed on Broadway. You had a lot of Fame creatives part of it, including Debbie Allen, who choreographed the original Carrie. But, in 2012, they reworked it, and that's actually the version we're doing. And a lot of what we're doing in this version of Carrie, the current licensed production of Carrie that's available, a lot of the original production is in it. So a lot of the scenes with Carrie and Margaret White are there. There's some reworkings of a lot of the kids songs that are there, as well as orchestration. So it's really cool to see how they actually took this flop and actually made it really successful and more modern and really able to speak to a new generation.
Right. And Katie, do you prefer Katie or KP?
Everyone in the productions calls me KP, so I figure we could go with that for this.
Okay. So we'll be all family. So KP, talk about your entrance into this production and playing the title role.
Yeah, so funnily enough, I actually found the audition on the Theater Philadelphia website, and I never heard the theater before, never been over to that area of Philadelphia really. I grew up across the river in Jersey, so I saw the audition. Carrie had always been kind of a dream role for me. The musical always seemed super exciting just to be a part of. Like any role would have been really fun. I headed over, did my audition. Josh called me like 2 hours after the auditions were over and offered me the role of Carrie. It was so surreal. I ran down the stairs and told my mom, but it's been so much fun. I mean, like all of the excitement at the beginning of it, getting into it, like I could have never imagined like just how much fun I would be having doing this show. It's kind of a weird, dark show with lots of heavy themes, but like I mean, the production team and the cast and Josh, everyone is just like so incredible. It's just been like such a great experience. It's really like highlights all my favorite things about community theater is really like the capital C community aspect of it. Everyone is really like a team and getting to kind of have my hand in each kind of cookie jar, helping with setting up the props and being there for all the like dance rehearsals, even though Carrie doesn't really dance. It's just been so much fun, and I'm really excited to get to like bring this show to life. We're really ramping up towards the performances, and I think it's going to be something really special.
Thank you. So we're talking about community theater, and a musical is a beast for any production company. But just talk about bringing this into the space and your thoughts on how to give it the space that it needs, but also realizing that you're in a community theater space with the limitations that all theater has, but the drive and the passion of all the people that are part of it to make it come to life. So just talk about bringing it from the page to the stage.
I mean, it's people, right? And we're really lucky that we have found a large group of people, not just cast, but on the production side too, that just want to see it happen. And it's something that I'm very thankful for, not just at Old Academy players, but in terms of like my own experience with community theater and building those relationships. It's really important. So when you want to do something cool, that's really hard and super crazy that we're doing it on a community level, let alone Old Academy players is a very tiny stage. We have 95 seats in the theater, and trying to accomplish some of the technical elements, literal feat from the audience. There's nowhere to hide. So getting people on board for that too. We have the biggest thing is the blood in the show, which I'm happy to report we are using real blood for anybody that's
Well, not real blood.
snooty about.
Yeah, calm down
Not
now.
not actual blood. I mean like stage blood. Like we're not using like confetti or lighting. Like there's going to be
That's why
blood.
there's so many folks working to make this happen.
Ex-
Real stage blood. We're not taking creative liberty with that. There's all the telekinesis elements of like literal things levitating or moving across stage. Our stage manager Hannah Leifheit, who's also wonderful, has really helped us kind of get those technical elements together. And the biggest thing is just people's willingness to be like, yeah, we can do it. We got it. We'll figure it out. Even on days when that's really hard. I think that's the long and short of it is people just willing to do it and wanting to do it because ultimately we're all here because we want to and we're having fun.
Yeah. Um, Alicia, I want to pitch this to you because you were talking about movies that become musicals, and when you think about it, there's usually some sort of tent pole that they're hanging on, where we're pretty much sitting in the theater waiting for this moment to happen. So that element becomes so essential that it's almost a co-star in the piece. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that as you were studying movies that have become musicals.
Yeah, and I think there's like, especially when you see, recognized IPs, enter the stage. As you said, those moments in a movie are kind of ingrained in our minds and sometimes are the aspects that last with us, especially in pop culture. And I think for Carrie, the musical does a great job with introducing new ideas, but also staying true to elements of the book as well as elements of the movie by keeping like iconic lines such as like plug it up, but also keeping kind of those fun elements and reimagining how do you make blood happen on stage? How do you make a door close using telekinesis? And I think, especially when you use the magic of theater, the magic of the stage, and the magic of stagecraft to make those movie moments happen, I think it really just ties that aspect of what makes theater, just it heightens it and it makes it fun, especially when you have to solve a problem of how are we going to make it seem like people are floating? How are we going to do that? And how are you going to make it seem that Carrie is able to slam doors or lift a cross on stage? And I think that's what's really going to make audience excited because it's you have this idea of what's going to happen. And whenever you see anything on stage that has been a movie, such as Death Becomes Her, Footloose, and you think of those big movie moments or those big set pieces, how do you make that happen? I think that's the one thing Old Academy really delved into. And that's probably, going back to Josh, like his thought process of how am I going to make this happen? And he did. And it really takes like the entire cast and technical crew. Again, shout out to Hannah because Hannah is keeping us all together. Making that happen, I think, is going to be one of the best and fun aspects of the show.
Yeah. And so while you have a great cast in place to bring this story to life visually for us, Josh, you put together or worked with a design team that is helping bring all these elements in there. And they seem to be, they're important to every production, but when there are elements, particularly, practical magic kind of moments, they tend to pull focus. So talk about how those elements have come together in conversations that'll bring it to life on the stage.
Well, one was from the outset being really honest with anyone that said that they were willing to do this, in the sense of like, we're about to do a Herculean task in a very tiny theater where there is nowhere to hide, where everything must be hidden and happen in real time. So, in terms of approaching people first that way and just being really honest. And then from the outset, I mean, some of our first meetings were, okay, how are we going to rig the set to have all these things happen? Who is willing to help us build this? Who can we find to help us support this so it's one, safe, and two, is effective? And then, okay, we don't have the means to do X, Y, and Z, but we want to. Is there a different way that we can do it? Or can we try to do it how it's supposed to be done? And luckily, every time we came across something, of which I would say there's about like really 6 or 7 massive technical moments in the show, which we talked about from the very beginning, and every single one of them we're just doing. We've resigned ourselves to the fact that we're going to do it, and it was really hard to get there, but now we have everybody's support and everybody's on board, so it's going to happen. And I mean, our outside of Hannah, who we've mentioned a couple times, one of our producers, Chris Wonder, who basically like roped his entire family into helping put not just the set together, but some of these other things. And it's like little domino that leads to big domino in terms of if you approach people with like a, yes, this is a community theater show, but we really want to elevate it and do not just the story justice, but do something really cool for the community. More times than not, you find people that are absolutely willing, that will go out of their way to make it happen.
Wonderful. Take us into the rehearsal room. Sometimes you always want to know what's happening first. So like what's the most important? But just take us in the room and say like what's the vibe like in the room with all of this trying to come together to make sense?
KP, you could do that if you want to, unless you
Yeah.
specifically wanted me, Darnell. But I think no,
No.
KP's been there every day pretty much
Absolutely.
forever.
Yeah, I mean, the rehearsals, Josh is really detail oriented and very like involved in every aspect of what's going on. It's something that I really appreciated throughout the rehearsal process, was just like how specific everything was and how clear we did. Obviously, we reworked scenes, stuff was staged, and then we'd be like, "Oh, I don't like that. Let's do this instead." And so I think it was just very thorough, and I think we've gotten to like kind of, obviously not the end product yet, but some runs that we've been pretty happy with. So I'm looking forward to kind of showing that off. But yeah, I mean, it's been fun. Some of the rehearsals are silly, goofy, and we're doing a fun scene with like everyone in the cast is there, and some of the rehearsals are just me and Annie, who plays Margaret, doing those scenes, which are a little darker and a little bit more intense. But just throughout all of the rehearsals, I think we've all kept kind of a sense of like play, but also a really nice like professionalism that like just kind of elevates it past like what sometimes people think of when they think of community theater. Something that like some of my castmates have said who've worked with Josh in the past, like when they do a show with Josh, it doesn't feel like community theater at the end. And I've really gotten to feel like that. It's very like, I think.
Cool. Are there, Carrie is a an interesting character, and there's a lot of tough moments in there. Do you have like we know all of our artists are professionals at every level that they are in, but is there a bit of a process or a transition that you have to go through for some of those tough scenes? Like how do you get through them? How do you care for each other in those processes, and how are you able to sort of ease out of them and get back to, other moments?
Yeah, I think it's been obviously quite difficult making that transition between being goofy and having fun at rehearsals together with like all my friends who are in the show and then like doing the scenes. It's a very different type of energy. And I think just having like a clear transition and checking in with each other. Zach, who plays Billy, always finds me in the wings before the scene where Billy sort of harasses Carrie, which I always really appreciated. It's never something that like was said needed to happen. And I think a lot of us are just very aware of how heavy the show is. I think Alicia, as Chris, could probably also speak to this a little bit because it's a tough transition. Alicia is a really nice person, so it's a bit of a change.
No, definitely. It's especially with Chris, there's like a very sadistic meanness that she has that was hard at first. I mean, Josh could tell you, he was like, Alicia, you need to say some of these lines. And I'm like, it's mean. That's hard. That's nasty. I don't want to talk like that. But it was like for a while there was a process for me to really think about, where is this character? Where is she coming from? And taking a lot of myself out to allow this character to really step in and breathe. And KP, they've been great and like bringing that intensity and like especially watching the story they're creating with Carrie and seeing how that interplays with Chris and like the reactions, and it just helps to really just cement myself as well as what everyone else is bringing on stage, just cement that world that it's easy to step in. And then as soon as I step off stage, I'm like, okay, we're still in it. We still have that energy, but we can kind of step back so that, we're not falling, too deep, too darkness, too deep into that darkness, but still keeping that kind of there's a fun to it sometimes of like, wow, finally I get to say what I feel. Those emotions that I sometimes feel that I can't tap into, I can kind of unleash. But it's also a nice restraint to come back to the reality and come back to myself after playing a character like that. So it's a really nice growing exercise.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of music in this musical. Are there particular songs that stand out for any of you, that you like more or less?
My favorite number is between Margaret and Carrie at the end of the first act, strictly because it's just Carrie's like awakening. I mean, in a typical coming of age story, there would be that. And for Carrie, it's kind of flipped where her telekinetic powers kind of symbolizes her womanhood as much as her actually, having her first period in the show symbolizes that too. But at the end of the first act, it's a very powerful number that culminizes in her being able to use her powers kind of fully and completely. And it's also great foreshadowing to the end of the show. So that's for me.
Anyone else want to chime in about songs?
I'll go. I would say my favorite song is the song's called Prom Arrival in the score, but it's when everyone comes to prom. You have like the entire ensemble, or the kids as we call ourselves, come in and they're all ready for prom, and it's just so many wonderful acting choices you get to see there, and they're just like up front and center. And especially when Tommy and Carrie come in and you just see them interacting with everyone, like I'm off stage because I don't get to go to prom, but it's amazing to just see the talent that everyone brings, the energy, the dancing. It's just so fun. And that's like my favorite part. And I'm just in the back like, man, I wish I could be part of this. But that's my favorite song.
Those are two really good choices. For me, I feel like I could talk endlessly about any of the songs, but one that's coming to mind for me right now is the opener in. I think is really powerful, especially like we've been talking about this show as it's like its own world. It's a very different vibe. And I think that In does a really nice job of bringing the audience in, pun intended, to like the whole world of the characters and how they're feeling. And the ensemble does like just an incredible job. There's just this beautiful like tableau at the beginning of the song, like all of the characters and the lyrics of the song is like they're insecurities and just like things that people go through when they're in high school, but it sounds like the end of the world, but it's just high school problems. But the whole point of the show is that kind of like for those characters and those students, it is that for them. Like I think it just like is a really nice introduction to the world of Carrie.
If I may, I think one of the things that, in terms of like the audience, if you come to see it, which I hope you do, we spent a lot of time, probably way too much time, actually developing full arcs for each of the ensemble members. They're all playing named characters, but they have, complete arcs between each other, relationships with each other, who they're interacting with, who they might be hooking up with or in a relationship with, or all these things throughout the entire course of the show that starts from the very beginning. And then you kind of see it morph and change throughout the show. You see a lot at the beginning of the prom scene. And then ultimately, for those that know the story, you know how that ends. So they've done a lot of great work, which is really hard. I mean, we have a 6-core ensemble group that are in everything, and they are immensely important to the show. But they put in a lot of time for full arcs, even if it's not, tied to lines or articulated. So if you come and watch and pay attention to each individual person, where they start and where they end is very different, and who they're in relationships with and who they're interacting with and how they interact with people changes as well. And they did a lot of wonderful work with that.
So this production is part of Philly Theater Week. There are 2 days, there are 2 show dates that are generally apart, April 26th and May 1st. If someone's coming through to Old Academy Players, how is this production a representation of what you can expect from Old Academy Players?
Yeah, OAP, and then Alicia can hop in too since she's an officer. But OAP has been providing continuous community theater since 1923. And something that we've really tried to do the last couple of years is redefine that and get new voices, get younger voices for this particular theater in to tell new stories that challenge our audiences. And I think we haven't fully announced even next season yet for OAP, but I think what you're going to start to see from Old Academy Players is more modern stories that really challenge the audience in a good and healthy way. Something that we've been talking about as a theater is that what we're putting on stage should say something, and it should say something important. And if it doesn't, then it's not really worth our effort in putting it on. So in terms of years past versus, years present in the future, you're going to start to see more challenging pieces that have something to say, that asks our audiences to step outside of their comfort zone while also providing a high quality product to them.
Alicia, did you want to chime in there?
No, I think Josh hit a lot of points. And one thing about Old Academy Players is that we're 100% volunteer-based organization. So, from the front of the house to all operations is completely volunteer. And we have so many folks, part of our executive board, as well as members who step up every day to make sure that the theater is, keeps running and is also, a voice within not only the East Falls community, but the greater Philadelphia area. So it's beautiful to really see how we can all come together. We have, generations of families there. Even my dad, he's part of the show, and this is our first show that we're actually working on together. So it's really amazing how you can see how we, really, I feel like Old Academy really embodies the idea of community theater, of, not only being 100% community run, but being there for the community and trying to provide, an artistic outlet for our community, which is wonderful.
Great. What do you all hope an audience takes away from this experience of Carrie the Musical?
That's a really good question. I just want to say that.
I mean, it's really a cautionary tale. I think there's a lot of different characters that I think the audience could identify with in the story because, kind of from the beginning, especially, it's an old story, it's an old book. Everyone kind of knows what's coming. And you see these moments leading up to it, and you see characters try and intervene. And you might think, well, what if they had done this or that? Or you might feel like you take kind of a Miss Gardner approach or a Sue approach when, you see this kind of thing happening. It's really just I think I would love for the audience to take note of that story and those attempts and kind of where they are coming from a good place, but where they ultimately fail. And it ends up not really changing anything for Carrie or for the other members of the school. So yeah, that's something that I think I hope the audience kind of pays attention to and takes away.
I hope folks. Oh, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead. You got it.
Oh no,
Please.
I was gonna say I hope folks are able to discover a new musical. Now, this musical, went through a huge production, history and rewrites, and I think that the current version that is available has some amazing music. And, speaking to a lot of our cast members, a lot of us fell in love with the music first, and everyone jumped at the opportunity to be a part of this because not a lot of places perform this. So I hope that audience are able to hear how this show actually got a second chance at life. And especially just, as strange as it might sound to say, Carrie, you mean that horror film from the 70s? Like, if you step back and you actually are like, wait a minute, let me go and actually listen to it. Let me go see this. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what it started in the 80s and what it is, what we're creating is, worlds different, but I think it's going to be a wonderful story and wonderful music.
For me, it's really just one of the main messages of the show. There's a line I think that actually Carrie says is just because somebody seems one way doesn't mean that they actually are. Expanding on that, a little bit of empathy goes a long way. And if empathy is provided too late, well, the damage is already done. So, like KB said, it's a cautionary tale. But if people can take away with it and maybe have the cognitive ability to think about how they treat other people and what they say towards other people and how they specifically speak about or to other people, maybe the outcome could be different for your community than it was for Carrie's.
All right. The production is Carrie the Musical. It is at Old Academy Players. It is running April 24th through May 10th. However, the Philly Theater weekdays are April 26th and May 1st. You can get your tickets and information at phillytheaterweek.com. You can also visit oldacademyplayers.org. Josh, KP, Alicia, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and unpack Carrie the Musical. This was truly a pleasure.
Thank you, Darnell.
Thank you.
Thanks.